Dialogue is a powerful storytelling tool, and it is a tool, not a requirement. You don't have to have dialogue in your script, and in fact, the dialogue you do have needs to be only what you need. But that's not how a lot of aspiring writers look at dialogue, so I'm going to help you out with a few principles when writing dialogue that will help you out with the script you're working on right now, and then I'm going to link a video at the end of this one that will help you begin to rethink what dialogue's function is as a tool in your storytelling. But first, 5 principles of dialogue you should start using right now. Principle 1, don't duplicate. One of the biggest crimes you can commit in any screenplay is to duplicate things. Screenwriting is about economy, and you can't get caught up in duplicating things. So if we see a character walk into a store and other characters are watching them, no one should say, "Oh, they just went into the store." Okay, we visualize the action. It happened. And then by having a character say it again, it's like it happened again. And this happens all the time in dialogue, and it manifests itself in one of 2 ways typically. Either there is action on the screen, and then a character describes the action in the dialogue. Okay, so that's the most common. Don't do that. Or the character says the same thing, but they just use different words to say the same thing. So, for example, "Wait, what do you mean? I don't understand what you're saying." It's the same thing twice. You have to pick one. Now, where this gets hard, and this is more of an advanced skill to recognize, is when you start pulling apart the motivations for why characters are saying what they're saying, and the motivation for the line of dialogue cannot be the same thing either. So let's say you've got 2 friends, Brick and Samson, and Brick is upset at Samson, but Samson doesn't know it. "What street do I turn on? What do I care? You want to eat, right? Whatever. Fine, grumpy pants. I'll turn here. Jerk." Now, on the surface, it doesn't seem like anything is being repeated or duplicated. The problem is all of Brick's lines are the exact same motivation, to tell Samson that he's an idiot. But you have to remember, even though you're writing a script that's meant to be read, in theory, that script that's meant to be read could be shot, and the dialogue is going to be said potentially by real actors. And there's going to be potentially a director trying to direct the actors. At least that's the lens through which the readers are reading your script. And actors hate doing the same thing twice. They hate it. And directors hate doing the same thing twice. They hate it. And while the dialogue seems different on the surface, the actor playing Brick has nowhere to go in the scene. He's playing the same note the whole time. And this conversation would be cut way down. At minimum, it'd be cut in half. "What street do I turn on?" Brick stares out the window. "Fine, grumpy pants. I'll turn here. Jerk." Now the duplicate motivations have been removed. So first principle, remove the duplicates. And if your screenplay is running long, and chances are that it's running long, this will help. Principle 2, don't fret the early drafts. The issue here is that each character needs to sound like their own individual self, and you know this part. But so many people get fixated on giving their characters unique voices when, 1, they don't yet know the characters well enough to have heard their unique voices, much less to distinguish their voice from the cacophony of other voices in the script, and 2, they don't even have the story figured out. So let me take a couple of steps back. The most efficient way to write a screenplay is to first lock down the story, which is simply the events that happen around a character who wants something badly, is having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. That's what you have to fix first. Get the story locked in. Then you focus on the storytelling. And if you remember what I said right at the beginning of this video, dialogue is a powerful storytelling tool. And the storytelling, or how you tell the story, comes after you figure out what the story is. But nope, lots of aspiring writers spend a bunch of time trying to tweak dialogue or trying to employ a host of other storytelling tools when they haven't even yet figured out the story. So stop worrying about dialogue in early drafts, at least not until you have a story locked in, because then a few things will happen that will be in your favor. 1, you know why characters are saying what they say. You know why those scenes need to be in your script, you know what needs to be communicated, and you know why characters are speaking the words that they are. And two, you spend all this time working on the story and the characters' voices are gonna start to come out. You're gonna start to hear them in your head like they're real people. And once you know why you have the scenes you have, once you know what needs to be communicated, and once you hear the voices of the characters, then you can worry about modifying and fixing the dialogue so every character sounds unique. But a lot of writers get fixated on the dialogue too soon in the scripting process. It's a storytelling tool. Spend your energy first figuring out the story. Then worry about how to tell it, and that includes the dialogue. And here's a bonus tip that may help you. You may have heard some variation of this, but one thing you can do early on is assign people you know or actors you're familiar with to the individual characters in your story. If Brick is your Uncle Freddie and Samson is your cousin James, you know their voices, you've heard them, and it will help you differentiate them in the script. The thing is, you can't stay there. And if you write a character that sounds too much like Keanu Reeves or Sandra Bullock and how they talk, that can sometimes backfire on you if their voice comes through too much instead of it being the voice that you created for the characters that you're creating. So if you want to use that crutch, you can, but a better strategy is to be patient. Figure out the story first, then the storytelling. So when it comes to dialogue, stop worrying so much about it when you're in the early drafts. Principle 3, authentic to our ears. And what I mean by this is dialogue has to sound like it's being spoken by real people. You know this, but you're a real person, you talk, so you think you know how authentic dialogue sounds, but that's not really it. You see, characters in film and TV are heightened versions of real people. So let me give you a simple example. You've probably been out with a bunch of friends. Everyone is talking, someone says something, maybe something funny, and you want to jump in with something else funny or witty. But by the time you think of it, it's too late. The moment has passed, conversation's moved on. Too bad, so sad. That is real life. But in a movie or TV show, characters who are always going to say something always have perfect timing. They say the right thing at the right moment, and when characters don't say the right thing at the right moment, it's not because they couldn't think of something to say, it's because their character prevents them from thinking of something to say. That is screenplay dialogue. It's always perfect, and at just the right moment and just the right amount, and yet it still sounds authentic. Here's an interesting fact for you. Most people don't speak in complete sentences, and yet give me 2 pages of dialogue and I can tell you if you're a new writer because all the dialogue is in complete sentences. Everyone's finishing their thoughts. Everyone speaks completely. No one cuts off anyone else. But that is not how we talk in real life. And when that is how dialogue is in the script, it feels inauthentic. And yes, I'm going to circle back with the last principle about how dialogue can look on the page to help you out on this front. But the first part of it is you have to learn to hear authenticity of dialogue. You need to recognize it. Here's 2 things you can do to get better at it. 1, go watch some bad movies and pay attention to the dialogue. It's often complete sentences or duplicated lines or it doesn't fit the story. Basically, it's gratuitous dialogue. Okay, dialogue just to have it. And then go watch a couple of good movies and also focus on the dialogue. Why is this one better than this one? Learn to hear the authenticity. 2, delete all of the party talk from your script. You've been to parties, people are engaged in small talk. Hi, how are you? Where do you work? What do you do? What's your favorite? Whatever. Yes, all of that is authentic and real. It happens in real life, but it's fluff in a screenplay. It has nothing to do with story or with revealing character. At best, that kind of dialogue is exposition. An exposition that is not needed needs to go away. So just delete party talk from your script. That will automatically help with the authenticity of the dialogue. It might be part of a scene or a whole scene. Get rid of the party dialogue. By the way, in my Fast Track course, which is an online course that is work at your own pace, there is a whole section on dialogue. There's also sections on story and storytelling, character building, format and software, building scenes, writing action, description, some other bonus things, practice assignments, feedback from me if you want it. And if you're tired of floundering and not knowing how to get better as a screenwriter, you should get on the Fast Track and you won't be floundering anymore. There's a link below if you're interested. Principle 4 for writing dialogue, avoid Q&A. It's so easy to fall into this pattern within dialogue. One character's asking questions and the other is answering the questions. Now, it's not to say that you can't do that. Of course you can do it. But what you don't want is a pattern of that because it starts to lull the audience, or the reader in your case, to sleep. Now, about the only time this is acceptable is in a courtroom or in an interrogation cell where one character is interrogating somebody else. Otherwise, when characters fall into Q&A, it always feels like an interrogation. And 99 times out of 100, that is not what you're going for. And honestly, this goes back to principle number 3. Q&A is not authentic. Yes, occasionally that happens in real life. You're trying to learn about someone, so you ask questions. That's perfectly normal. But in film, it's boring unless it's an interrogation. And you know why interrogation is not boring? It's because there is conflict laced throughout every single line of dialogue. However, if you've got two characters talking about their favorite musician, I doubt there's any conflict there. It's not interesting. So if you have one question and answer in a scene, that's probably fine. If you have a bunch of questions, so question, answer, you got to fix that. Find another way. Chances are there's a more economical way to do it anyway. Principle 5, use punctuation to help. The main rule of punctuation in a screenplay is this: be consistent. Whatever you do, be consistent. I'm going to show you what I do. You can use it or change it to suit how you write. But on this one, I pretty much follow conventions. Sometimes I change it around so you can see what I do. And it's often what you're going to see in other screenplays. So here's an excerpt. If you want to read through it, just pause. I'm not going to read through it. But here we go. Parentheticals are for clarity. If you're using them, don't use them for how to deliver a line. This is where the nickname Riley's comes from, because Riley is overused in parentheticals. Plus, it's how to deliver a line. If the dialogue isn't clear on the how to deliver the line, it's not a good line of dialogue. Use parentheticals to help with clarity if you're using them, and use them sparingly. You also don't need to write things like beat or pause. Use punctuation and description lines to break things up or spread it out. If one character is speaking and you want them to pause, just insert an action and then have them continue. The nature of how you've written it on the page will communicate a pause. For a beat, just use ellipses, the 3 dots. If the ellipsis ends the sentence, 3 dots followed by a period, so 4 dots. If someone's interrupting, you can use 2 dashes. 1 dash is for hyphenated words. 2 dashes are typically for interruptions. So whether the dialogue is being interrupted or the action is being interrupted, you can use 2 dashes in either place, and then just start with the next thing. Some people like to have 2 dashes for the person who gets cut off and 1 dash at the beginning for the person who is cutting them off, but you don't need it, honestly. And as I mentioned earlier, screenwriting is about economy. Eliminate all the stuff you can. And whatever you do, be consistent with your grammar. If you use 2 dashes for interruptions, then always use 2 dashes. If you use an ellipsis for a beat, then don't ever write beat. Just use ellipses throughout. And as I mentioned earlier, do not forget that dialogue is a storytelling tool, and it serves some specific functions in your screenplay. And you have to know what those functions are if you really want to level up your dialogue. And you can learn about those by watching this. Thank you for watching. Fun buttons and links below, especially the fast track if you really want some dialogue help and other storytelling help. And when you tell a story that matters. See you later.